I try not to get too handsy. I thank you all for coming. I really appreciate having you all here today to hear this debate that the students have been working hard to prepare for the last several weeks. Before I get into what we're going to be talking about today, I just wanted to take a moment to thank OSSE and the Institute for Civic Engagement and Democracy. They've worked really hard to get this event here. In addition, the Department of English and Communications and the chairperson, Jaime Flores, I think they've done a great job promoting this event, and I think that we'll have a really good time learning about voting rights today. So before we jump into the debate proper, I just want to remind everybody that we have a couple other events that are coming up in the near future as part of this direct democracy program. On Thursday night from 7 to 8:30, we are going to have a debate watch event. You know, the presidential debate is going to take place on Wednesday night, and hopefully you will watch that debate and learn a lot from that debate. This is the opportunity to see the candidates call each other out and to challenge the claims that each candidate is making. And so if you watch that debate, come see us on Thursday night from 7 to 8:30 in room 4305, and we'll have a discussion of the debate and a discussion of the issues. Also, on October 17th, you will see another presidential debate, and we'll have a debate watch event there in G122, and then another public debate like this one here on October 22nd, and that will be here in this room as well. So, that being said, let's get to the debate at hand. And the topic for today is whether felons ought to have the right to vote. And arguing in favor of the proposition is Bruno Solari. If you take a stand and wave, Bruno. And arguing for the negative is Alec Nobatovsky. This is quite an important topic, and I think really fits in with the theme of democracy. According to the Sentencing Project, 5.3 million Americans, that's 1 in 40 adults, were unable to vote due to a felony conviction in the 2008 elections. This included 1.4 million African American men, 676,000 women, and 2.1 million ex-offenders who completed their sentences. Across the country, there are 48 states that have some sort of restrictions on the rights of felons to vote, including here in Florida, where felons do not have their voting rights even automatically restored after they have served their sentences. And so whether that is a just system is a really important topic for discussion as we look not only at the outcomes of our elections, but the very process of democracy itself. And so with that said, I think the students are going to give you a rousing discussion of this topic and the issues that are related to that. So, Bruno, the floor is yours, sir.
Criminal offenders have been stripped of their public rights since 1100 BC, originating in Athens, Greece, although back then it was a much more barbaric process. Ancient Greeks employed a punishment called infamy to deny criminals the right to vote, appear in court, serve in the army, make speeches, and attend assemblies, titling criminal offenders as infamous. Fast forward 3,112 years, and we are still allowing these ancient principles to exist. I believe that felons should have the right to vote because it is their civic duty and because it is an immoral, unconstitutional, and quite frankly, outdated process to revoke one's rights to elect an official to office. Before I thoroughly present my case, I would like to define a few key terms from the resolution. First, a felon is a person who has been convicted of a felony. A felony is a crime typically regarded as more serious than a misdemeanor and usually punishable by imprisonment for more than 1 year or by death. Should is the urge to take action, and to vote is a civic duty of the citizens of a community to elect a candidate into various forms of office. The practice of disenfranchising in America began in the 1700s. In the northern colonies, citizens lost their rights only for specified crimes that had special relationship to the electoral process, such as perjury, bribery, or betting on elections. In the southern colonies, however, race was a determining factor in voting rights. Between 1776 and 1821, 11 states disenfranchised convicts. Along with those who were convicts, Black, Indian, and women too were unable to vote, stirring them into this melting pot of racism and immorality. In March of 1973, in the case of Ramirez versus Brown, the California Supreme Court found that the state's criminal disenfranchisement scheme violated the Equal Protection Clause of the federal Constitution. The members of the California Supreme Court concluded that regulation and criminal law enforcement served as the primary means of furthering interest. Therefore, it reasoned disenfranchisement measures were not necessary to accomplish the state's goals, and the provisions were unconstitutional. Once word of the decision of the case reached Washington, the United States Supreme Court reversed the California Supreme Court decision, upholding felon disenfranchisement's consistency with the 14th Amendment. Why the federal government is so scared to allow felons the right to vote is unclear, but there must be a reason so deep within as to why they work so hard to reverse a court order a very professional, ethical, and moral California Supreme Court judge made. In present-day America, the government strips the voting rights of more people than any other democracy in the world. An estimated 4.7 million Americans cannot vote because of their criminal record, including almost 600,000 veterans. Even though those 600 citizens risked their lives in this country's vein, the government has no sympathy or remorse and easily took away their rights for committing a crime. According to Demos, a multinational issue organization, an estimated 1.6 million of these disenfranchised citizens were no longer under the criminal justice system. People who did their time in jail for the crimes they committed, people who rejoined society and are living a productive life, cannot vote, even though they so deeply have an opinion. Everyone does. And everyone should have the right to express that opinion. Aside from the lack of remorse from the federal government, the racial disparities in the effects of taking away the right to vote from felons are staggering. About 1.4 million African American men are among the 4.7 million disenfranchised Americans, comprising 36% of that 4.7 million. And here I thought that we buried racism along with Abraham Lincoln, shot for his continuous actions in passing civil rights, or with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who gave the most compelling speech this country has seen, preaching for the end of segregation and hopes of unity, who was also shot for his belief in civic justice and equality. But no, racism lives, especially when it comes to the disenfranchisement of African Americans. According to an analysis done by the Miami Herald, white criminal offenders in Florida are nearly 50% more likely than blacks to get a withhold of adjudication, a plea deal that blocks their felony convictions even though they pled to the crime. If we are truly an equal country, then we will strive to spread the equality and unite everyone, no matter their past, the mistakes they've made, their poor judgment, or the crimes that they have committed. Leaving jail is hard enough for a convict. We have to welcome them with open arms. They were let out for a reason. If we allow felons to vote, there will be no resentment against the public or government. It's as simple as filling out an absentee ballot inside the bars of a jail cell. It reassures those criminals that their voice is still loud and that we are still listening to them. They are citizens of this country, and they do matter. Everyone trails off the path once in a while, and they shouldn't be penalized for only being human. We should burn inequality to the ground. Let those who fought for civil rights rest in peace, and for once, become a united front. Because how exactly can we stand by our country's slogan, United We Stand, when there are 1.4 million of us who can't voice their opinions when it comes to government? How can 600,000 people who fought for this government and its people not have a say in who gets to run it? There is nothing that can be employed to justify stripping the rights of felons. We shouldn't follow Hammurabi's ancient code of an eye for an eye. One commits a crime and suddenly they're forced to give up all the rights they have for this country. The ends do not justify the means. Imprisonment is the ultimate punishment, and I am a strong advocate of the phrase, don't do the time if you can't do the crime. Don't do the crime if you can't do the time. But to take away the rights of someone is immoral and unconstitutional. Denying felons the opportunity to vote transgresses fundamental political rights. In deciding whether felons should vote, we should remain outside the political community. The public should engage in discourse about what citizenship means and whether the Republican fear of unsavory voting truly justifies the exclusion of millions from the opportunity. I certainly don't think so. Felons should be heard. Felons should have the right to vote. Thank you.
You stated that voting is a right. What makes it a right and not a privilege?
The fact that in the 14th Amendment, it states that everyone is equal, so there's no way to be able to strip the rights. It's unconstitutional.
You stated that Caucasians get off easier than African Americans. What does that do with voting for felons?
Well, it's just stating that there's more racism. As I stated in my speech, the disparities in racism are staggering. It's ridiculous that white males, white people in general, can get off a crime when blacks are going to have to do the time and not have any rights the second they get out.
But what does that have to do with the voting of them?
Well, stripping the voting rights is discrimination, and racism is also discrimination.
So you're saying that it's racism against only blacks, or against whites and blacks, or?
Stripping the voting rights is racism against all fronts, but there are more racist towards black and there are more lenient towards whites when it comes to stripping the voting rights or convicting someone of a crime.
You say that they get stripped of all their rights, but they have plenty of rights other than voting.
Such as?
Such as the right to reproduce, the right to get married, the right to...
Yes, but along with what voting should be, those are social responsibilities. Those are rights that we have in the First Amendment. Those are rights that we have in the Bill of Rights.
Well then, if they're rights, why can they be taken away?
This is exactly why we're having this debate. It's unconstitutional to take them away.
No further questions. Hello. The government team will have you think that voting is a right, not a privilege. I sincerely believe that felons should not have the right to vote. Why should they? A quote by President and General Counsel of the Center of Equal Opportunity, who, mind you, should be for felons voting, agrees with the statement that we don't let children vote, for instance, or non-citizens, or the mentally incompetent. Why? Because we don't trust their judgment. So the question is, do criminals belong in this category? And I think the answer is clearly yes. People who commit crimes have shown that they aren't trustworthy. Stated by Roger Clegg on November 1st, 2004. As for racism, I believe that racism has nothing to do with it. Do you believe that sexism, that because most felons are male, does that make it reverse sexism? No. Most people would agree that the majority of people in prisons are male. A fact that no one would say that that's not, because it's true. It's just an unfortunate fact that many African Americans are in prison. It's unfortunate, but it's true. That doesn't make it racist. Did you know that 2/3 of prison inmates, of felons who get released will be rearrested within 3 years? I didn't know that before I researched this, but apparently, because by the UCS press release, most criminals are nearly 65,000 people are released from nation's prison every year. About 9 million more are released from jails. 2/3 of the Wakanda prison are rearrested within 3-year release. If we wanted to, for example, a school bully who gets detentions all the time, why would most of them won't change their ways because they are the way that they are and they like doing what they do. Because of that, I believe the felons who 2/3 of them go back to the crimes that they committed, they won't change their ways just because of a few rehabilitations or even time in prison. That's going to make them want to do it more. Felons won't be voting for the majority on top of that. I believe that it will just give politicians another way to undermine the majority. If politicians want, say for example, voting was allowed for felons, the politicians would most likely do things that would benefit the felons in order to get their votes. Our system is not perfect, but we need to uphold the cracks that are in our armor. We need to fix them or not let them get cracked at all. I believe that felons should not have the right to vote. I believe it's been that way for ages and it should not be changed. If it was done that early, it doesn't mean it's outdated. It means that it's right. Why do you think if someone does something early, it doesn't always make it right? Yes. But for the most part, I think they were just before their time. For ancient Greece, after all, we give felons plenty of rights already. Why do we need to give them more? They've done a crime, and they should lose a right. If somebody drives under the influence, they're going to lose their driver's license. Do you want to tell me that it's unconstitutional to get their driver's license revoked if they're drunk driving and kill somebody doing that? No. I believe the felons should not have the right to vote for the safety of America and everyone in it. It's unfortunate that many of them are African American, but that doesn't make it racist. It's unfortunate that they don't have the right to vote, but I feel like there's good reason for it. There's enough proof to show that if we let them out of prison and give them the right to vote, or even let them vote in prison at all, they will, furthermore, go back to a life of crime, and most of them, at least, will be voting in their own best interest for politicians that will make what they want, and rather there will be another source for the politicians to undermine the majority of people. I rest my case and yield my time. Thank you.
You stated that voting is a privilege. What makes it a privilege?
That it can be taken away, because if it's not taken away, then it's a right, yes, but it is taken away, making it a privilege.
Okay. You also stated that the mental incompetent cannot vote. Where did you get that fact? Because I know for a fact that the mental incompetent can vote.
I got that fact from procon.org.
Okay, well, that fact...
From Roger Clegg, President and General Council of Center of Equal Opportunity.
Well, that fact is false. Also, you said that felons are not trustworthy. Well, there are people who cheat on their wives every day. There are people who lie in business every day. They are untrustworthy. Should they not be able to vote because they're untrustworthy?
Yes, because, I mean, why would they? Yes, they're untrustworthy, but at least they didn't harm any. Yes, they're untrustworthy, but I'm not saying that the government is perfect. We just need to smooth over the cracks, is all. Unlike you, who states that the government has no flaws.
I never stated that, but okay. You also stated that 2/3 of those people will commit crimes. Don't you believe that if we re-invited them into society, allowed them to participate in the civic engagement, wouldn't they not commit crimes? Wouldn't they feel more a part of the community instead of being outsiders?
Wouldn't a bully be still a bully if they give him plenty of detentions?
Yes, but you're talking about a bully. That's an immature mind in high school who has not fully developed. Every bully outgrows themselves.
Yeah, like that's true. Where do you get that fact?
You also stated that politicians undermine authority. Are you calling all politicians corrupt?
I'm not saying all politicians are corrupt. I'm saying that they're undermining the majority, not authority. First of all, you got that wrong.
No, I stated authority.
No, you said,
No, I have authority written here.
yeah, well, I said majority.
No, you said authority.
I said majority.
Also, you said that politicians can sway the votes of felons by doing things that they would like.
Yes.
Like what? Give the, for instance.
Like maybe letting them, lowering the amount of time that they have to sentence.
Okay. You also stated that it is not an outdated process, and if it's been here for so long, we should keep it. Slavery went on for ages. Do you think we should have kept slavery?
Of course not. But just because something is outdated, but just because something is old doesn't make it outdated either. You're saying that it's because it's old it makes it outdated. That's definitely not true. There are plenty of things we uphold now that were from ages ago that are still here today for good reasons. I'm not saying that everything old is good. I'm saying that there are different things on both ends.
My opponent started his case with a false fact saying that the mental incompetent cannot vote, when that is completely false. And that is also discrimination and racism. Also, he went on to say that felons aren't trustworthy, so they shouldn't be allowed to vote. There are millions of us who are untrustworthy, and you don't see us being stripped of our rights to vote. It's ridiculous. Also, he stated that it's an unfortunate fact that African Americans get more time than Caucasian Americans, but it's a statistic. It's not a fact. It's a statistic. It's been studied, and it's unconstitutional, and it's racist. Also, he stated that 2/3 of the people that are stripped of their voting rights will commit crimes again. But doesn't it bring up the fact that maybe if we did allow them to re-enter society, to participate in civic debates, to be able to vote, to voice their opinions, wouldn't they not commit crimes? They would feel more a part of this community. Also, people change. Prison will change a person entirely. We have to keep an open mind. We have to be like our founding fathers who are open-minded. We cannot keep allowing felons to live life not being able to vote, not being able to grasp all the opportunities that we have just because they committed a crime. People change. Also, my opponent continues stating that politicians will do things to get votes from felons, but what can they do? It's not like they're gonna say, I'm gonna legalize crack and cocaine. They can't do that. Nobody would vote for that. There's nothing that a politician can do to get something that a felon would want. Also, he stated that felons have enough rights after, that the few rights they have are enough. We are a democracy. Everyone should have equal rights. No one should have different rights. We should all be equal. We should all be able to participate in the same activities. Thank you.
My opponent stated that having politicians going for votes of felons could not happen. I feel like he's living in a fantasy world. Our democracy is not perfect. It does not have no cracks that doesn't need filling. If something were to happen that could cause a crack, people will be exploiting it and it will just get bigger. Also, he says that people change and that they would, when they re-enter society, be well-rounded individuals that uphold the law. I find that completely ridiculous. Because, as I stated before, about 2/3 of felons, regardless of voting or not, will recommit crimes within the next 3 years. It's statistic. He's right. And because it's a statistic, that makes it pretty damn close to a fact, because many people have agreed on it. Do we really want, and furthermore, do we really want you, the individuals, to be undermined by people who have committed crimes, people who are felons have done something wrong that they know they did wrong and probably even enjoy doing it. Or maybe they didn't, but they need to pay for their crimes. It is not a right, it's a privilege to vote. I don't believe that anything in the Constitution, or at least very few things, are unanimously a right. They're just very bendable. They're very bendable rights. Let's put it like that. You can't have a world where everything's perfect. That would be utopia. We do not live in such a world. There will be bad people, and they will take advantage of the situation if we let them vote. I believe felons shouldn't have the right to vote. We shouldn't let them, because you will pay for it. Thank you.
This year, more than 600,000 people will be released from prison, returning to their families and their communities. Many of them are intending on starting over and building a brand new life. Statistics show that being an active, participating member of community helps with rehabilitation. It helps the community by strengthening its voting base, and history shows that there's an inequality of disenfranchisement, as many of the original Jim Crow laws were intended to disenfranchise Americans whose voter base in some states are still affected by those laws today. My opponent argues that people with felony convictions shouldn't be allowed to vote because they are untrustworthy in character, raising a concern about how these people would vote. But in that case, we should exclude admitted racists, or taking that argument even further, perhaps people who don't even know about politics wouldn't even be able to vote. Also, my opponent also stated that ex-felons would somehow vote for a pro-crime agenda. It's difficult to imagine how this would happen, and in fact, it hasn't happened in states or even countries where felons can vote. In fact, disenfranchisement policies are in sharp conflict with the goal of promoting public safety. I believe that felons should vote. It violates the 14th Amendment, it violates the social contract theory, and it's unconstitutional. We are all brothers and sisters here, and we should all be able to voice our opinions. Thank you.
Great. Yeah. Just to put this in perspective, Mitt Romney has been locked away, from what I hear, in some dark dungeon somewhere for about 4 months, or at least that's what they tell us, right, in the media, and trying to prepare for this presidential debate that is going to happen Wednesday night. And these debaters have been working hard in class for the last 4 weeks to get ready for this one, and I think they did a phenomenal job getting prepared. Especially Alec here, who wasn't even scheduled to be the original debater and stepped up to the plate as an alternate. I think he deserves a special round of applause. Quite proud of him. And Bruno looks damn sharp. Good looking young lad. All right, well, what you witnessed was a Lincoln Douglas style debate, but in the interest of true parliamentary style debate, I would like to call now for what we call a division of the House. So the way a division of the House works is simply that you show by your applause who you think won this debate. So if you believe that the affirmative won this debate, that being Bruno, please clap now. If you believe, however, that this debate was won by the negative, Mr. Alec, please clap now. If you believe it was a tie, go ahead and clap. All right. I don't know. I think that was too close to call. Any other judges? What do you think, Bill?
I'd probably give it to the government.
Give it to the government? All right. Congratulations. Thank you all. I think we'll set the balance of the time for you all to mix and mingle and discuss the issues. I think we just had an important discussion about an important topic, so we can share our ideas with each other for now. Thank you all.